Commander Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance frigate Nova, watching the space around him turn dark and dangerous. His crew had been tracking the distress signal for 3 hours now, and something about it did not feel right. The signal came from deep space, far from any known Empire territory, which was strange because the transmission patterns matched the royal transport codes that Earth's intelligence files had documented. Was a man of 38 years, with a face carved by years of difficult decisions and harder choices. His dark hair showed streaks of gray at the temples, and his gray eyes held the kind of focus that made his crew trust him without question. He had been commanding the Nova for 5 years, and in that time he had learned to listen to his instincts. Right now, his instincts screamed that this situation was complicated. "Captain, we are getting visual contact," said Lieutenant David Cross, the young sensor officer who had transferred to the Nova just 6 months ago. His voice carried excitement and worry in equal measure. Leaned forward, studying the screen. The transport vessel was indeed in design, that much was clear. But it was torn apart on one side with massive hull breaches and no active engines. Worse, he could see 3 smaller ships circling the wreckage like sharks around blood in the water. They were 2, but they had an aggressive posture that made his jaw tighten. "Those ships are not trying to rescue anyone," said quietly. He had seen enough conflict to know the difference between a rescue and a hunt. "They are making sure no one survives." His tactical officer, Commander Sarah White, nodded from her station. She was a woman of 45 with sharp intelligence and no patience for nonsense. "The transport is not responding to any hails. I am reading minimal life signs, Commander, one concentrated area in the lower section." Made his decision without hesitation. He had been trained to follow protocol, to report to Earth Alliance Command and wait for orders. But he had also been trained to do what was right, and right now, waiting meant letting someone die. "Yellow alert. Bring all weapons online, but do not fire unless they fire first. I want a rescue shuttle ready in 5 minutes." Sarah looked at him with something like approval. That could start an incident with the government. "Then it is a good thing I am more concerned with saving lives than avoiding political problems," replied. The 3 ships immediately changed their formation when they detected the Nova's approach. Could see the message clearly in their movements. They did not want the humans there. That told him everything he needed to know about what was happening on that transport. "Open a channel to those vessels," ordered. "Standard greeting. Tell them we are responding to a distress call and we will be conducting a rescue operation." The response came back fast and harsh. The lead ship transmitted a warning in broken English that made clear the humans were not welcome. They claimed the transport had suffered a catastrophic accident and there was nothing to save. They suggested that the Nova leave the area immediately or face consequences. Smiled without humor. Consequences. He had faced consequences before, and he was still here. He had lost friends and crew members who had chosen to do the right thing even when the wrong thing would have been easier. He was not about to explain morality to aliens who were clearly trying to commit murder and cover it up. "Increase speed," commanded. "Get us between that transport and those ships. Launch the rescue shuttle now. Send Lieutenant Cole to lead the team. I want him to search every section of that ship and bring back whoever is still alive." Cole was one of the Nova's best officers, a man in his early 30s with the kind of courage that made other men want to follow him into danger. He did not hesitate. Within minutes, he was suiting up, gathering his team of 6 people and preparing the shuttle for launch. The ships moved to intercept but was ready. He brought the Nova into a direct line between them and the transport, weapons fully active and ready to deploy. It was a dangerous dance, the kind of thing that could start wars, but had learned long ago that some things were worth the risk. "They are not targeting us," Sarah reported, relief clear in her voice. "They are standing down." Of course they were. The ships had been sent to commit a murder that was supposed to look like an accident. They were not here for an actual military battle. The moment humans showed up with weapons ready and the will to use them, the calculation changed. Murder became too complicated. They would have to try again later. The rescue shuttle descended into the damaged transport while watched on the screens. Minutes stretched like hours. His crew was silent, focused, waiting. Then's voice came through the communication system. "We have a survivor, Commander. One person in the lower section, Med Bay, female. She is in bad condition, but she is alive. We are bringing her up now." Felt something release in his chest. One survivor. It was not much, but it was something. It was a life saved when the plan had been to let her die in the dark and cover it up with lies. The shuttle returned in record time. Within 10 minutes, the medical team had the survivor in the Nova's sickbay and was standing outside the med bay window, watching through the glass. The survivor was a woman, tall and elegant even in her current condition. Her skin carried a faint blue tint that marked her as, and her black hair fell across her shoulders. She wore clothing that spoke of rank and privilege, though it was now torn and stained with her own blood. Dr. Park, the Nova's chief medical officer, was working quickly and efficiently, stabilizing her injuries. The woman was unconscious, but her eyes moved behind her closed lids as if she was caught in nightmares. "She has been through hell," said quietly as entered the med bay. "Multiple stab wounds, blunt force trauma, and she lost a lot of blood. But she will live, Commander. I will make sure of that." Nodded, looking down at the woman. He had no idea who she was, but he knew something important. Whoever had wanted her dead had been willing to murder her in cold blood. That meant she was either dangerous to someone, or she knew something dangerous. Either way, the humans had just made a powerful enemy. Behind him, through the viewport, he could see the 3 ships turning away. Moving back into the woman woke up 3 days later, and the first thing she did was try to kill everyone in the med bay. She came off the medical bed with surprising speed for someone who had been stabbed multiple times, and she had apparently picked up a scalpel from the equipment tray. Park managed to get out of the way just before she could use it on him, and he called for security while backing away with his hands raised. Arrived within minutes to find the woman backed into the corner of the med bay, scalpel held in front of her like a weapon, her dark eyes wide and filled with something close to madness. She was breathing hard, and her wounds had opened up slightly from the exertion, but she did not seem to notice or care. "Do not come closer," she said, her accent thick but her English clear. "I will not be taken, I will not be brought back to them." Took in the situation with a single glance. He could order security to restrain her. He could have her sedated. He could do 100 things that would be easier and simpler. Instead, he did something reckless. He set down his weapon on the nearest table, raised both his hands where she could see them, and walked toward her slowly. "Nobody is bringing you anywhere you do not want to go," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I am Commander Hayes of the Earth Alliance. My ship rescued you from that transport. You have been asleep for 3 days while our doctor kept you alive. Those are the facts. Everything else is negotiable." The woman stared at him as if he was speaking a language she did not understand. "The Earth Alliance? Humans." "Yes," confirmed. "You are safe. I know that probably means nothing to you right now, but you will have to trust me because it is the truth." Something in his face must have registered as genuine because the woman lowered the scalpel slightly. Her breathing was still ragged, but the wild panic in her eyes began to ease into something more like wariness. Took one more step toward her, moving slowly enough that she could stop him if she wanted to. "My name is," he said. "What is your name?" For a long moment the woman did not answer. Then she lowered the scalpel all the way and her hand dropped to her side. When she spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "My name is, I am Princess of the Empire, and the ones who attacked my transport were my own family." Nodded as if this was not the worst possible revelation he could have received. Inside, his mind was already calculating the consequences of sheltering the princess of an alien empire on his ship while her family tried to murder her. But on the outside, he remained calm. "Well, Princess, welcome to the Nova. Come back to the medical bed. You are bleeding again, and our doctor needs to make sure you do not die from that. Everything else can wait." The princess looked at him for a long moment, and then she did something unexpected. She sat down, not gracefully, but with the exhaustion of someone who had been running on survival instinct alone for longer than she could remember. Park moved back in quickly and carefully, treating her wounds and checking her vital signs. The princess did not resist, but she watched the entire time, as if trying to figure out if he was someone she could trust or just another threat wearing a different face. Over the following weeks, slowly began to understand the Nova and its crew. Brought her information about Earth, about humanity, and about why his crew had risked everything to rescue her. He did not do this through official briefings or formal presentations. Instead, he let her see it through actions. When the Nova's water filtration system failed, could have used considerable wealth and connections to requisition new parts through emergency channels. Instead, she watched him go to engineering with Lieutenant Frank Miller, the ship's chief engineer. Together, they took apart the broken system, identified the fault, and built a replacement from salvaged materials. It took them 6 hours of hard work, and when they were finished, hands were cut and bruised and covered in grease. Asked him later why he had not just called for replacements. Because we did not need them, explained. We had the knowledge and the materials to fix the problem ourselves, and more than that, we solve our own problems. That is what humans do. The princess found this perspective alien. In the Empire, a person of her status never did manual labor. That was beneath her rank. Problems were solved by throwing resources at them or forcing someone else to handle them. She had never considered that solving your own problems might be more valuable than having the wealth to hire others to solve them. As the weeks passed, she began to notice other things. The crew treated each other with a kind of loyalty that seemed to go beyond duty. When Medical Officer Park lost his daughter in a preventable accident back on Earth while the Nova was on assignment, the crew did not simply express sympathy. They changed their route, delaying their mission to help him travel home and attend the funeral. No one filed a complaint about the delay. No one questioned the decision. They simply understood that one of their own needed help. Had never seen loyalty like this. She had seen obedience, certainly. She had seen fear and coercion. She had seen self-interest dressed up as devotion. But she had never seen people who would sacrifice their own schedules and missions simply because a friend was hurting and needed them to be there. One day, about a month after she had woken up, asked a question that surprised him with its honesty. Why did you risk your position and your career to rescue me? You did not know me. I could have been anyone. I could have been a threat to your ship and your crew. Why did you take that risk? Was quiet for a moment, considering the question. They were in the observation deck, looking out at the stars, and he took his time with his answer. Because someone was trying to kill you and you were alone, he said finally. I was not going to let that happen. It is as simple as that. We do not need a complicated reason to do what is right. We just do it. Looked at him, this man who had already changed everything about how she understood the world. She was beginning to understand something important. In her empire, people would have asked what the rescue would cost them, what advantages they could gain, what position or wealth could be extracted from saving her life. They would have made her feel like a burden, like an obligation that needed to be repaid. Had asked for nothing. He had simply saved her life and then gone back to his work. He had not demanded gratitude. He had not asked for information or favors or political advantage. He had simply done what he believed was right. For the first time in her life, understood what it meant to be valued for who you were rather than the message came on a quiet morning, when the Nova was moving through a remote section of space that had no official designation on any known star charts. Commander was reviewing reports when Sarah White's voice came through the communication system with an edge that made his blood go cold. Commander, we have multiple contacts entering sensor range. I count 12 military vessels, and they are moving to intercept our position. Was out of his office before Sarah had finished speaking. By the time he reached the bridge, the tactical display was showing the approaching ships clearly. They were not ordinary patrol vessels. These were military craft, the kind that carried heavy weapons and carried the insignia of the Imperial fleet itself. They are hailing us, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, demanding that we surrender the princess immediately and submit to Imperial authority. Did not hesitate. Bring power to the engines. Get us moving away from those ships at maximum sustainable speed. Do not charge weapons, but get them ready to deploy. I want to know what they are willing to do before we make any decisions about confrontation. He opened a channel to the med bay where had been spending most of her time. Park had cleared her for light activity weeks ago, and she had been helping in various sections of the ship, learning how things worked and understanding the crew better. I need you in my quarters immediately. Bring nothing with you. She arrived within 3 minutes, and one look at her face told him she already knew something was wrong. The Nova's crew had known for weeks that they were being pursued, though had kept the details from her. But now there was no time for gentle explanations. Your family has found us, said without preamble. There is an Imperial fleet heading toward us, and they are demanding your surrender. I need to know what you want to do. His face went pale, then hard. Her hands clenched into fists, and for a moment saw the princess she had been before the assassination attempt, the woman trained in power and politics and survival at any cost. But that moment passed quickly, and something else replaced it, something stronger. What are our options? She asked. I can hide you in a secure section of the ship and tell them you are not aboard. They might believe me or they might not. I can turn off our transponder and run dark through the asteroid field to our trailing. Or, paused, knowing what he was about to suggest was probably insane. You could transmit a message to your father directly using the emergency channels. Tell him you are alive. Tell him you chose to stay with us. That might stop them, or it might convince them to attack harder. Walked to the viewport and looked out at the approaching ships. They were visible now without instruments, just dots of light against the blackness of space, but they were growing larger with each passing moment. "How long until they are in weapons range?" she asked. 15 minutes, Sarah's voice came through the communication system. Maybe less depending on their acceleration capacity. Turned back to, and when he saw her eyes, he knew what she was going to do. "I am not sending any message to my father," she said. "I am not hiding, and I am not asking you to run. Those ships are coming because someone in my family is still trying to kill me. If I disappear or go to ground, they will hunt you. They will hunt your ship and your crew until they find me. But if I show them that you are not my enemies, that I came to you of my own choice and I choose to stay, then maybe the calculation changes." "That is insane," said, but he was already understanding her logic. "If you expose yourself, if you give them a clear target, they might not hesitate to attack." "Then I trust you to stop them," she said simply. "You have proven that you would risk everything to protect someone in danger. Now I am asking you to risk everything to protect me by my choice." Felt the weight of that request settle on his shoulders. This was the moment where everything became real. This was the moment where he could no longer hide what was happening from his command structure back on Earth. This was the moment where he had to decide if he believed in the crew of the Nova and in the woman standing in front of him. "Open a channel," he said to Sarah. "All frequencies, let them hear me." The communication system activated and spoke with the kind of calm authority that had made his crew trust him for 5 years. "This is Commander Hayes of the Earth Alliance vessel Nova. We have the Princess aboard this ship by her own choice and under her own protection. Any attempt to attack this vessel will be considered an act of war against the Earth Alliance. Princess has asked us to protect her life, and that is what we will do. Stand down your ships or face the consequences." It was a bluff, a massive bluff, because the Earth Alliance could not actually defend against an Imperial fleet. But it had to sound real enough to make the commanders question their orders, and it had to buy enough time for something to happen that would change the situation. The next few minutes were the longest of his life. The ships slowed their approach, and he could almost feel the confusion in that hesitation. They had expected a merchant vessel trying to run and hide. They had not expected this. Then the communication channel opened again, but this time the voice was different. Older, more authoritative. It was Emperor, and he was speaking directly to. "Commander Hayes, you have made a very serious mistake. That woman is a criminal and a traitor to the Empire. Release her now, or your ship will be destroyed." Before could respond, moved. She pushed past him and spoke directly into the communication system, her voice carrying the unmistakable accent of her. "Father, I am alive, and I am here by my own choice. The commander of this ship saved my life when my own family was trying to take it. I came to understand what true loyalty means among humans, something I had never known among our people. I am choosing to remain under the protection of the Earth Alliance." There was a long silence. Then the Emperor's voice came back, and this time it carried something that sounded like shock. "You are making a choice that will cost you everything you have ever known." "No," replied, and her voice was steady and clear. "I am making a choice to keep something I have only recently discovered. I am making a choice to stay with people who value my life for its own sake, not for what I can provide to them. I choose this." The ships held their position for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to fall back, widening their distance from the Nova. The Emperor had made his decision. His daughter was choosing to leave him, and he was choosing to let her go rather than destroy her. As the ships pulled away and the immediate danger passed, collapsed against the wall of his quarters. The fear that she had been holding back finally broke through, and her body shook with the weight of what she had just done. She had chosen a new life, and there was no going back. Moved to her side and held her, offering the silent presence of someone who understood what its 6 months had passed since had made her choice. And the universe had shifted around that moment in ways that nobody could have predicted. The Empire, shocked by their princess's defection and impressed by the boldness of her declaration of loyalty to the humans, had opened diplomatic channels with the Earth Alliance for the first time. What had started as a simple rescue had become something far more significant. The peace delegation arrived at the orbital station above Earth with formal ceremony and dignity. Prince Adrian led the group, and when he met with and in the diplomatic hall, his expression was carefully neutral. Adrian was younger than his sister by 5 years, with the same elegant features and blue-tinted skin, but his eyes held the careful calculation of someone trained in the politics of empire. "Sister," he said, using the formal greeting reserved for official contexts, "it is good to see you alive and well. The Emperor has been greatly concerned about your welfare." Smiled with just enough warmth to show she had not forgotten her brother completely, but not enough to suggest she was reconsidering her decision. "Adrian, you look well. The journey from is not short. I hope you are comfortable aboard the transport." The pleasantries continued for several minutes, the kind of carefully choreographed conversation that happened between powerful people who had learned not to reveal their true positions too quickly, but could see the tension beneath the surface. Adrian had come with proposals and had to decide whether to reject them out of hand or hear what he had to say. After the formal reception, Adrian requested a private meeting within the conference room, started to leave but touched his arm. "Stay," she said simply. "Whatever your message is, Adrian, the commander should hear it. He has already proven more loyal to me than our own blood." Adrian's expression flickered for just a moment, showing something that might have been anger or hurt or perhaps understanding. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of genuine offer rather than threat. "Emperor is prepared to make you an offer," Adrian said. "The position of ambassador to Earth, full diplomatic authority, responsibility for establishing formal trade relations and peaceful coexistence between our peoples. It is a position of significant power and influence. You would be well compensated with access to imperial resources and the protection of the throne. But you would also be able to remain on Earth, to maintain contact with your crew and with Commander Hayes if you choose to do so." Listened carefully and could see her mind working through the implications. The offer was genuinely generous by any standard. It was exactly the kind of position that would have excited her before the assassination attempt, before she had learned what true loyalty meant. It was a way to have everything, to maintain her status and power while also staying with the people she had grown to care for. "What if I refuse?" asked. Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Then the Emperor will recognize your choice to leave the Empire, effective immediately. You would be stripped of your title and your claim to the throne. You would lose access to your family wealth and properties. Essentially, you would become a private citizen with no official standing in our empire." Felt his jaw tighten. "So your father is punishing her for choosing to live." Adrian turned to him with something that might have been respect in his eyes. "The Emperor is doing what empires do, Commander. He is protecting his interests. My sister has made her choice, and now he is making his. That is the way of things in our world." Was quiet for a long moment and could see the conflict playing out on her face. She had grown up understanding power and privilege, and the thought of losing all of that was not insignificant. But she had also grown to understand something deeper in the past 6 months, and it was that deeper understanding that won. "Tell Father that I appreciate the offer," said finally, "and tell him that I am grateful he is willing to release me from my obligations to the throne. I choose to remain on Earth as a private citizen, but I also choose to work with the Earth Alliance on the principles I have learned from the humans here. I will help establish peace between our peoples, but I will do it as a free woman, not as a princess of the Empire." Adrian stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. When he spoke again, his voice was different, more personal and less official. "You understand what you are giving up, do you not? Everything we were raised to believe was important, everything we were taught to value, you are choosing to walk away from. Do you really believe the human's way is better? Do you really believe that loyalty without power, that meaning without status, is worth the sacrifice?" Moved to stand beside her brother, and when she answered, her voice was quiet but absolutely certain. "I know it is worth the sacrifice because I have lived both ways now. I have had everything the Empire could give me, and I was still in danger from my own family. I still felt alone even surrounded by people who claimed to love me. But here, with the Nova and with Commander Hayes, I have something I never had before. I have people who would die for me not because they have to, but because they choose to. That is worth more than all the treasure in the Empire." Adrian nodded slowly, and when he turned to face her, his eyes held something that looked like understanding. "Then I will tell the Emperor that his daughter has found something he never could give her. A home with people who value her as she truly is, not as a bargaining chip or a political asset." He extended his hand to her in the human way he had learned during his time on Earth. When she took it, the gesture meant something more than just a formal goodbye between siblings. It meant acceptance of her choice and a kind of blessing that he was giving to her new life. As Adrian and the delegation left Earth to return to, stood beside on the observation deck of the orbital station. They watched the ships disappear into the void, carrying news of the princess's defection back to the Empire. "Do you regret it?" asked her. "It is not too late to change your mind. Adrian could relay a message to your father. Things could still be different." Shook her head, and when she smiled at him, it was the smile of someone who had found something precious and would never let it go. 1 year after had chosen to remain on Earth as a private citizen, a crisis emerged that threatened both the Empire and the Earth Alliance. A rogue faction of alien merchants, operating outside any legitimate government authority, had managed to acquire dangerous technology that could disrupt the power systems of entire star systems. They were planning to use this technology as leverage to demand an enormous ransom from both civilizations, and their target was the critical space station that served as the meeting point between and Earth territories. Received the intelligence report on a morning that started like any other. The Nova had been recalled to Earth for a diplomatic mission, and had been working as a civilian consultant for the Earth Alliance's diplomatic corps for months now. Her knowledge of culture and her unique perspective had made her invaluable to the growing peace process between the two civilizations. When the crisis broke, the first thing did was go to. "We are going back out there," he told her, finding her in the diplomatic office where she had been working on new trade agreements. "The rogues are planning to hit the space station in 72 hours. We have to stop them." Looked at him, and he could see the fear in her eyes, but he could also see something else. The same kind of determination that had made her stand up to her own father and refuse to be afraid. "Then we stop them," she said. "What do you need?" "I need you to stay safe," said. "I need you to understand that this is beyond your responsibility now. You have built a new life here. You do not have to be part of this." But even as he said the words, he knew they were not true, had never chosen safety over what was right. That was not who she had become. The next day, the Nova set out from Earth with a board. She had insisted on going, arguing that her knowledge of military protocols and tactical thinking would be essential to stopping the rogues. Had wanted to keep her away from danger, but he had learned long ago that could not be protected from herself. She was too brave for that. As the Nova approached the space station, the rogues made their move. Their ships appeared on sensors suddenly, moving into attack positions with speed and precision that caught even Sarah White off guard, but was ready. He had faced dangerous situations before, and he knew the key to surviving them was staying calm and making decisions based on facts rather than fear. "Shields up," he commanded. "Get us between the station and those ships. I want a defensive perimeter established around the docking areas." The battle that followed was fierce and brutal. Weapons fire lit up the space around the station, and the Nova took hits that lit up the damage report screens in red warning lights. The ship's engineer Frank Miller worked frantically to keep the engines and weapons systems operational while the vessel shook around him. But had something the rogues did not expect. He had and her knowledge of strategy. She stood on the bridge beside him, offering real-time analysis of their tactics and predicting their next moves with eerie accuracy. When the rogues tried to split their attack, knew it was a feint and warned to keep his main defensive line steady. When they tried a high-low attack pattern, she recognized it as a maneuver used by military academies and suggested how to counter it. "They are going to try to breach the station's power core," said suddenly, watching the tactical display. "That is where the dangerous technology is being held. If they succeed, they can detonate it remotely and destroy everything in this sector. We have to get a team aboard the station now." Did not hesitate. He called for volunteers, and half the bridge crew stood up immediately, ready to go. But he needed his best people, and that meant taking risks. "Sarah, you have the bridge," he said. "You are with me. We are taking a team to the station." "Commander, no," Park's voice came from the medical station. "She is still recovering from injuries sustained during the diplomatic visit to the capital. She is not cleared for combat operations." Looked at, and she met his gaze without flinching. "I am going," she said simply. "You need my knowledge, and this is my fight as much as it is yours. You taught me that loyalty means being there when it matters most. This is when it matters most." The shuttle launch was chaotic, with enemy weapons fire tracking them across the void. But they made it to the station and led his team through the corridors toward the power core. Behind him, moved with the kind of determination that made him understand why she was royalty. She had been trained for this, trained to face danger and make critical decisions under pressure. When they reached the power core, they found the rogue soldiers already there, working on activating the dangerous technology. A firefight erupted, and found himself fighting harder than he had in years. A bullet grazed his shoulder, and another one caught him in the side, but he kept moving, kept fighting, because stopping meant the station would be destroyed and thousands of people would die. It was who made the critical move. While and his team kept the rogues pinned down, she approached the technology they were trying to activate. She did not try to fight. Instead, she spoke to the commander of the rogue force in the language, using words and concepts that carried cultural weight and emotional power. She told him about her choice, about how she had learned that true strength came not from technology or weapons or power, but from loyalty to people and principles worth defending. She told him that the rogues were making a choice that would destroy not just a station, but everything they believed in. She offered them a choice, a way out, a chance to walk away from this path. And incredibly, it worked. The rogue commander, moved by her words and her willingness to approach danger without violence, ordered his soldiers to stand down. The activation sequence was stopped, and the dangerous technology was secured. As emergency medical teams rushed in to treat the wounded, found himself on the ground, bleeding from the gunshot wound in his side. Was there immediately, kneeling beside him, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. "Stay with me," she said, and her voice carried the same kind of command that she had heard used 1,000 times. "You are not allowed to die on me, Commander. I did not give up my empire and my title just to lose you now." "Not planning on it," managed to say through the pain. "But maybe we need to talk about assignments that do not involve getting shot." The Navy doctors arrived and took over his care, and as they were loading him onto a medical transport, held his hand. She did not let go until they literally had to separate to get him to the medical facility for emergency surgery. In the weeks that followed, as recovered and the full extent of what had happened became clear, it turned out that actions had done something remarkable. Her speech to the rogue commander had been recorded and broadcast across multiple channels. By speaking about loyalty and choice and the value of human principles, she had changed how both civilizations thought about the conflict. The Empire, instead of seeing her as a traitor, came to understand her as an ambassador of a new way of thinking about power and governance. The Emperor himself issued a public statement saying that his daughter had found something in the humans that the Empire should have valued all along. The principle that true power comes from the loyalty of those who choose to follow you, not from dominance enforced through fear. When was finally well enough to walk again, he found waiting for him in the observation deck of the orbital station, looking out at the stars. He moved slowly, still healing, but he made it to her side. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked. "For proving that loyalty is the most valuable thing in the universe," replied. "For choosing us. For becoming more human than many humans I have known, even though you come from a completely different world." Took his hand, and in that moment, with the stars spreading out before them and the vast universe around them, everything felt right. She had lost a crown and a throne, but she had gained something that nobody could take away from her. She had found a place where she truly belonged, with people who valued her not for what she could give them, but simply for who she was. The princess had become something greater. She had become a woman of principle, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol that loyalty and compassion could triumph over power and fear. And as she stood watching the ships move between Earth and space, she understood that this was exactly where she was supposed to be. The prize was never wealth or power. The prize was loyalty, and she had finally found people worthy of hers. "No regrets," she said. "For the first time in my life, I understand what it means to make a choice about your own future, and I have chosen this. I have chosen Earth. I have chosen the crew of the Nova. I have chosen you, and that choice is the only thing that truly belongs to me." Meant to sacrifice everything for what you believed in. Hat you could provide, and she knew that this feeling, this strange warmth in her chest, was something precious, something she would never give up. The dark of space, they had failed, but they would try again. Had just one certainty as he looked at the unconscious woman. The moment she woke up, everything would become much more complicated. But for now, she was safe, And for now, that was enough.